Good evening. Welcome to the May 8th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. This evening we're honored to have Mr. David Lomazny Jr., from Pastoral Care Director for Motor City Church, to provide our invocation. So please rise for the invocation and then remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Thank you all so much. Privilege and honor to be with you this morning, or this evening. Let's pray. Lord, we love you and thank you for your many blessings in our lives. We acknowledge you that every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father. So we turn our attention to you this evening. Lord, we lift up our city of Troy to you, the members and the representatives that are here today. We pray that you give us great vision for our city. Let all that we say and do today be pleasing to you, be a great benefit to our citizens here. Lord, we lift up our police, our firefighters, all our first responders. Father, keep them safe every day. We lift up our local government to you, that they would serve and lead our community well. We pray over our school systems, that you would teach and train our children well. Father, we lift up our churches to you, that we would make an impact around the world for good. God, thank you for direction, wisdom, vision, and guidance for all of these things that we've shared. Please be with us in all that we say and do today. Lord, bless our city in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Officially call the May 8th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting to order and ask for the roll call for Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation to celebrate Dean Sellers Ford for 75 years in business from 1948 to 2023. We've got 3 Sellers family representatives here this evening, so if you'll join me down at the podium and face out, I'll go ahead and present that proclamation. You followed orders pretty well. That was good.
Sit in the front.
All right. Well, welcome here. Come over on this side. I want you to be behind. I'm going to present this proclamation. 75 years of business is a big deal, and we're honored to have you here this evening. And I remember, I think, on the 70th anniversary, maybe it was you. Some of you were here for sure. I remember that, but 75 is a big time. So I'm going to read this proclamation into the record, and it's an important story that I love to share. So, again, this is a proclamation to celebrate Dean Sellers Ford for 75 years in business, 1948 to 2023. Whereas on January 14th, 1948, Dean Sellers, Inc. was founded by Dean L. Sellers. Born in Ohio, Dean came to Detroit in search of the automobile industry, where he started his career with Chevrolet. He moved to the Ford Motor Company with Henry Ford and the era of the Whiz Kids, and headed up the Ford Ferguson tractor division. What he really wanted, though, was a Ford dealership. So in 1948, he opened Dean Sellers, Inc. at 16700 Grand River in Detroit. And whereas in the early 70s, Dean retired and turned the business over to his eldest son, Tom. As the business climate changed, Tom spent the latter of the 1970s in search of a new location for Dean Sellers Ford. In June of 1980, Tom struck a deal with Ford dealer Richard Turner and relocated to 2600 West Maple Road in the Troy Motor Mall. Thank you. Its current location now for 43 years. Tom's 3 children are in the business, all working at the Troy location: Blair, Dean, and Liz, who now collectively have over 100 years of experience in the automobile retail business, with a future generation to come. And whereas when people think of, Adam, the nephew, right? Whereas when people think of Dean Sellers, often words like tradition, longevity, loyalty, customer satisfaction, and family are spoken. Tom Sellers enjoyed saying hello to employees and customers every day. At Sellers, ensuring customers are treated well has always been a top priority. And the dealership's long-term success can be attributed to talented, loyal, and hardworking employees, like Chuck Barr in parts, who started at the original Grand River location in 1976. And whereas, having over 30 years of employment at the dealership are Steve Fulcher in service, Chris Griffin, body shop, and Dave Erickson parts, Christy Parker, sales, Andrea Pulukowski, sales, Ryan Moore, sales, Fred Klein, finance, and Andy Bell, service, all have over 20 years. With over 15 years are Mark Harris in service, Sharik Askarali service, Larry Bishop service, Chris Carr service, Darlene Paul sales, and John Whitfield sales. Too many to list have over 10 years. The sellers strive for happy employees who in turn keep customers happy. Being active in the community and having a good reputation in the marketplace are also important. And whereas Dean Sellers Ford has been one of Ford's top 100 volume dealers for many years and has achieved the Ford Motor Company's most prestigious award for customer satisfaction 10 times. As the dealership continues to operate in this ever-changing current era of technology, they will continue to strive and help customers with their automotive needs. So now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and the city council of the city of Troy hereby congratulate Dean Sellers Ford on their 75th anniversary in business. And be it further resolved that the mayor, city council, and city management join the citizens of this community in celebration of the 75th anniversary of Dean Sellers Ford and look forward to it being part of Troy for many, many more years to come, offering excellent service, buying, and servicing a vehicle. So this proclamation is presented this 8th day of May 2023. It's signed by myself as the mayor. All members of our city council have also signed it. Who should, you want to take it? You put your hands up. Congratulations, Liz, and I want to say thank you so much for being a major part of our community, obviously. More than half of those 75 years have been in Troy, so it looks like we're well on the good Troy, so way out. So I want to pose for a quick picture with this proclamation, if you don't mind.
Okay, we're
Figure it out. Why don't you, let's do it this way. There we go. Sorry, Adam, I pushed you in the end.
don't worry.
You gonna say a few words, Liz?
No,
For our
I just want
community?
to
Or
say
you gotta say it in the mic. Say it in the mic.
wonderful being in Troy. It's such a great community.
Gotta say it in the mic.
Oh, okay.
They can hear you, but those watching can't.
Oh, those watching. Wow. Now I'm nervous. I just want to say it's been wonderful being in Troy. We've done a few renovations. The city's always been so helpful and supportive, and it's a great community. Our customers are fantastic. Your schools are great. It's just been a pleasure for us. We're very fortunate to have been in this community and look forward to being here for a long time. And the Motor Mall is a neat place, so thank you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Having 3 sellers here is really nice. Thank you. Thank you. All right, that concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. There are no carryover items, so we move on to public hearings. We do have one this evening. E1 is the adoption of the proposed 2023 to 2024 city budget. That'll be introduced by our city manager, Mark Miller, and our chief financial officer, Rob Malzik. So I'll turn it over to you, city manager Miller.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd just like to start off and do a little introduction, and Rob will kind of mop up anything else that I haven't touched. First of all, I know Council will, probably someone will say this, it may seem like we're not studying this budget a lot this evening, but we have spent a lot of time on this budget with information, interaction, and study meetings with City Council. We also do an advance every fall to help give the city manager and my staff policies on the direction for the city. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the staff that work on this. Every single department, your department head will be working on it, and then a variety of other staff persons, and this would never be produced without that. And specifically, I want to thank in our office, Meg Schubert for stepping in and filling in for Stephanie because Stephanie moved on to a new job, and Beth Tashnik, who always works on the final product, and they support Rob in that matter. And Rob probably would admit he didn't know, he wouldn't know what to do if they weren't helping him. He'd have to find some other people to do it. Once again, it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of staff to get it done, and I thank everybody that does it. I think just a couple points that I would like to bring up is we obviously are in a new era of high inflation, and this high inflation has caused us to be much more reactive and much more nimble. Like automobiles, we've found that we can't just wait. If we find some that are available, we've gone through no bid situations and we go after them. And we'll continue to do that. But what is more concerning is maybe not the right word, but a fact that we all have to recognize, with the adoption of this budget, the unassigned fund balance will be 20.6%. And 20% is the low end of our fund balance policy. Obviously, it's 20 to 30%. And I think that all of us would agree, we never spend all of our money in our budget. We're pretty assured that that unassigned fund balance will grow over time. If we take an example of how many police officer positions we don't have full right now, that will add up into a couple $1 million pretty quickly. It's also important to note that we are reducing the fund balance in the capital fund balance, in the capital fund. And that's important to note, because over time we'll get to a point where we may need to feed that capital plan with additional general fund dollars in the future. One other thing that happened that has never happened, because of the high inflation, our assessed valuation went up a whole 5%, which has never, ever happened since that law was passed in the 90s. And so with that, the budget is before you. Probably the most important thing that we do, both council and all of your staff. I would like to invite Rob up, since Rob is personally responsible for this overall as the Chief Financial Officer, just to see if you have any other comments or address anything that I really didn't touch on. Thanks, Rob.
Before you do that, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is anyone else, does the sound really weird to anybody else, or is it just my speaker? You were like in and out, and I just want to make sure our IT's not over there, but.
And I made a point to bring it close.
It's just the sound is, maybe it's just my speaker?
I think it's your speaker.
Okay, that's fine. As long as no one else is experiencing it, I'll deal with it. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Maybe it's only Mark's time. Go ahead, Rob.
No, so Mark said basically what I wanted to, that again, our fund balance is at 20.6%. It's on the low end of our threshold, and we know the reasons for that. And then our capital fund, we left $3 million in there. We've, again, committed in the four budgets that I've done so far, we've committed to the roads greatly. Again, another $20 million in roads this year. Very, very important. And then from the facilities assessment study that was done in 2018, Dennis and Kurt and their teams, we've tried to fix as many of the buildings. We've gone to roofs and HVAC, and that's what we've really spent our money on in the last 4 years. So we're left with approximately $3 million. And more important than anything is our millage rates. Millage rates are the exact same as they are in 2023. And for the first time, because of the high inflation that Mark had mentioned, there was no Headley reduction. So that's why our millage rates are exactly the same as last year, or this 23 year that we're in. So that's all I have, and if anyone's got any questions, love to answer them.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions for city management? City Manager Miller?
Mayor, just a quick comment. We talked about the general fund and the capital fund, but there are approximately 19 or 20 other funds which are included in this budget, which is important to note.
Thank you. Questions from council before we open the public hearing? As City Manager Miller said, this is not the first time we've seen this budget, obviously. We've asked a lot of questions and gone through a big process to get to this point. So with that, I'll open the public hearing for E1. Is that the right procedure? It is the right procedure. All right. I understand that several of you have signed up. All of you are actually to speak on this item, regardless of whether you signed up for a later section. So we'll move to that list. And first on the list is Sarah Lackey.
Good evening, Mayor Baker and members of council. My name is Sarah Gabus-Lackey. I'm an attorney and I live here in the city of Troy. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Board of Directors of Ridgedale Community Theater, which is a community theater here located in the city of Troy. It's located just west, on Long Lake, just west of Ace Hardware. Chris Wright is also a board member, and he's here with me tonight too, providing moral support. I'm here tonight to speak with you about the importance of an active and thriving performing arts program in your community. As I'm sure you are aware, cultural organizations play a critical role in providing a vibrant, thriving community, defining civic identity, and building an engaged and connected population. Nonprofit theater sector contributes nearly $2.8 billion to the U.S. economy through direct payments for goods and services, and by drawing crowds to the area, supporting jobs and businesses, including local restaurants, bars, and hotels. Most importantly, students who engage in the arts have a more positive academic outcomes. Engaging with the arts develops students in critical thinking skills, creativity, and problem-solving ability. Live theater, especially, has been shown to enhance students' experiences understanding literature while positively impacting social interactions with others, building confidence and an empathetic understanding of human nature and complex social issues. That brings me to Ridgedale. Ridgedale has been located in the city of Troy since the fall of 1983, yet we have never been a partner with the city of Troy to foster community enrichment opportunities like the ones I've just spoken about. Ridgedale has provided live theatrical performances for over 6,000 patrons this year and has provided on-stage and behind-the-scenes experiences for hundreds of actors, stage managers, sound and light technicians, costume and makeup designers, set designers, and the like. Full stage live musical and stage productions I only have a minute left. Okay, so I'm going to get to the point. All right, so we have many productions coming up this year, including Escanaba in the Moonlight, Barefoot in the Park, A Christmas Story, Miracle Worker, It Should Have Been You, Willy Wonka, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Grease. And we would invite you all to please come to one of our performances to see the high quality of a production that we produce, and we are extremely frugal. The last production, we provided 9 live performances for patrons of Troy that came out and other communities that came out to see Enchanted April, and we did that for under $1,600. And so that we're here to ask you to consider including Ridgedale community players in your budget. We want to provide a community program for children over the summer. We do have children's programs already, a JAR program and a TAR program, teens. In any event, I will provide the rest of my presentation to your Assistant City Manager. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Perfect, thank you. Appreciate you coming forward. Next up is Jen Myers. You didn't want to go first, it looks like. It's all right, it's the way that.
I came with a group of neighbors. I thought one of the other ones was going to spearhead this for us. But regardless, well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jen Myers. I'm a resident here in Troy for 13 years. And I'm here to speak about the budget process and paving of dirt roads. I want to talk about the Special Assessment District process approval, how it felt like we kind of came at it a little backwards after talking with the city. We put out there was a information flyer that went out that we could vote on to try to get 50% of the neighbors at least interested in just talking about the roads and seeing if we want to get a survey done and then get an estimate done and maybe see if we want to put together this special assessment district, get 50% of the neighbors to sign off on it, and it'll go to city council and it should be done. But that's not what happened. We came before the city council with meeting all that criteria, and it hadn't been budgeted for, hadn't been talked about. So we're hoping to kind of get in from the beginning and start talking about the budget process for this. And wondering if 50% of the neighbors aren't enough, what is? Let's not try to shoot for a number that's not going to be enough. And maybe we can try to talk about what the concerns are for the folks that are concerned about this. There are subsidies for low-income folks, and I don't think that was addressed enough to our neighbors to try to actually show them what their actual costs might be. And just thinking about right now what our issues are with the roads. We have erosion issues. Right now, there's a neighbor of mine who was in an adjacent neighborhood, actually, but I think the road isn't being graded properly. The road isn't crowned, and all the water from our neighborhood just sheets down into their yard. It's flooded. They've called the city out. The city's tried to help out, but nothing's happened. So they put down some 2x4s to try to stop the water from flooding their yard. It has worked, but I don't think that's the way the road was intended to be. I think we should have swales. We should have, if we're not going to have pavement, at least we should have the roads properly addressed with swales to trap some of that water, get it to where it's supposed to go. I think we're probably investing too much in those roads right now. The city comes by and they dump dirt in the potholes in the middle of winter because we can't grade them. And all that happens is it gets washed out, and it leads to more erosion as well. So perhaps we can think about the investment of the machinery, the employees, the labor that goes into grading the roads, the materials, the salt spray application, and all of that, and balance that against what the maintenance would be if we had the roads paved. And so with that, I thank you for your consideration in the budget approval process going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. I think you did a fine job going first, so good. All right, next up is Jim Fagan.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the time. I'm also here to discuss budgetary concerns and the Middlesex subdivision of paved roads. I'm frustrated. I'm really frustrated. I've lived in the neighborhood since 2008. This is not a brand new topic for council or for our neighborhood to bring to you in the city. I believe we followed everything along the process to get in front of you, get the 50% plus requirement, which we did. And every one of you gave the answer of budget as the reason for being turned down in a 6-0, basically 7-0 vote, because I think Ms. Hoderick was not there, in person. So we've talked about the decay of the roads, the erosion. I've joked with you about not being safe to run. I've written 3 letters to each of you, and I've gotten 0 response. So I'm here in person tonight to look you in the eye and ask you a cluster of questions, which is, what do we need to do as a neighborhood to get your attention to be a part of the budget? How do we become a priority for you guys? This is a group and an initiative that is not going away. I don't say that as a threat. I'm saying it because we are sick and tired of roads that are kept like they're in the 1950s. In one of the letters I wrote to you, I have sarcasm in the way that I speak sometimes, in the way that I write. Our city motto is a city of tomorrow today. That's not what you get when you come into our neighborhood. I encourage any of you to go there tomorrow or the next day. I'd say the roads are about a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst. But you can see what it is that we deal with and how we have to swerve around the potholes and the damage it takes to the cars, to vehicles. You don't want to walk around in that stuff. The dirt is an ancillary problem too. It's not fun either. We know the budget's important. We know you have all kinds of other expenses. Mr. Miller and Ron have talked about that. And I think that we felt our efforts weren't heard. And it was my opinion that in that meeting, that vote in January, it seemed like that information was provided to you an hour before the meeting. Like, it was a surprise that the city didn't give you information at all throughout the course of almost 10 months from the time we started that process to the vote in January. So I'm asking and begging you, what do we need to do to become a priority on your agenda and your budget? And I got 20 seconds left if anybody has a quick time for an answer.
Doesn't work like that, Mr. Fagan. Appreciate it, though. Good try. Good try.
Thank you.
There you go.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks. Thank you. We will have an opportunity to speak in a little bit. So next up is Raja Pooley.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Again, I'm here to talk about the same issue, what my other fellow residents have talked about. I've been a Troy resident from 2007. I've lived in different parts of Troy, and I moved to this area in 2017. It's a beautiful neighborhood. We really love it, but the condition of the road is terrible. No matter what we do, we keep calling city whenever there's a rain. The day after, you should just come and drive. or just walk and see the state of roads. It is definitely not where you want to be. But again, we love this place. We love to live there. But at the same time, we want safety too. All these things are missing here. And before, we were told you need to get a majority. So we had a petition drive, and with Jim and a few other people, we went around knocking on every door and to get people, to sign for this petition. And we had 58% of the residents sign for this. That's pretty good majority, we feel. Again, with the time we had, so we could get 58% of the people sign for this one. Again, we were told that's not an absolute majority. Wish we were told, what that majority was even before we started. Plus, again, we were never told, that there was a budget issue, before the petition was started. At least had we known about that, maybe we would have addressed it in a different way. And now that we know it's a budget issue, we would like to request you to please include this in the coming budget, the budget you guys are planning, so that, at least that won't be an issue. As far as the residents are concerned, at least, the majority of the people definitely want it. We'd really, really appreciate it if you could please include it in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Sunil Rao.
Respectable Mayor and council members, I'm not going to belabor what has been said, but I want to bring to your attention the democratic process that you all follow here. And I don't think the process that went through last year when it started in October, followed by the vote that happened in January, was truly a way of knowing how transparent it was. We all felt that we were partially heard. We were heard, but not completely heard. And we want to make sure that we are here to present what has been presented by others. But this issue is not going away. We're going to fight democratically and present our side of the story, and to see if this can be in the forefront at every budget this happens, because I'm sure this is not a new agenda item for every one of you, and I'm sure Mr. Miller knows to kind of incorporate this part of it as part of the paving process. But I just wanted to make sure that this stays in the forefront and you look into it very carefully when the budget is prepared for the next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Marco Masciulli.
Thank you very much. I'm here to speak on the same issue. My name is Marco Masciulli. First, real quick, I want to congratulate Attorney Bloom on your recent induction into the Michigan Lawyers Weekly Hall of Fame. What an accomplishment. I was there at the Troy Marriott for a couple of my colleagues, and it was cool to see you inducted. Congratulations. Secondly, and the reason why we're here tonight is because we heard last time it was the budget, the budget, the budget. I was surprised by how surprised you guys were that this was an item that was brought to you on that night. When I moved to Troy in 2017, my wife had been a resident pretty much since, I think, 1986. It was brought up shortly after we moved there. And initially, my wife and I wanted to keep the dirt road. So we voted against considering the consideration for paving the road. That has changed. I'm sure you've heard tonight, the conditions have gotten worse. I believe last time we were here, it was mentioned, I'm not sure from the engineering department, mentioned the weather, rain, makes it harder to get out there, destroys the road faster, they're looking for time. I don't know, I don't want to bring up a hot topic or hot political topic at a city council meeting, but that seems to be the trend, rainier weather, and maybe it's going to continue to get worse at a worsening rate. And it seems like every few years we have a 100-year flood on the news. So I think it's going to get worse. The other thing I wanted to mention was the fact that so many of our neighbors came out here and talked about the nature of the neighborhood. It is a beautiful neighborhood. I do not think paving the roads is going to change the nature of the neighborhood. We have large lots. We're fortunate to have a lot of greenery, a lot of trees. I do not think it's going to take that many trees down. I have friends who live in the Hickory Heights Woods neighborhood. It's paved, and the deer are there. They're not worried about if the road's paved or if it's dirt. Even the albino deer hangs out in my friend's yard. It's been in my yard a few times. So I don't think it's going to change the neighborhood. And the other thing I want to say is, I felt like it was discounted, the effort by the city council last time. And I mean that not to offend you guys or to say you guys were wrong, but 58% of the residents to come out and to say they want something done from scratch. It isn't just a majority versus, it's not just a vote, right? It's not just there for people to decide. 58% of the residents had to bring that to you. And I think you all know it's hard to get people to do anything. But that took effort. And I don't think you need a supermajority, but I look forward to being part of this process in the years to come, and I hope you guys take action. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Irene Sadikoff.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about the same issue. I was here a few months ago when the majority of our neighborhood voted to have the roads paved. There were some that disagreed, but I believe we all, including the council members, can agree that we have a beautiful neighborhood. It's true that it was initially similar to up north feeling. However, I want to point out, as people's needs and traffic increased, the city is just not able to timely and effectively upkeep our roads. Unfortunately, we as residents are left dealing with the consequences. The dust is in the summer, and mud and potholes are during all other seasons. As I mentioned last time I was here, we live in the corner house at Adams and Square Lake. So we have the worst part of the road. And now people, as it was mentioned before, people are driving around the potholes on our grass. So that's not the best way to do this. So as a result, our low-volume roads are now have continual maintenance problems, and as a result are affecting our property, our frontage, as well as our value. So simply put, they're just not built to last the way they are now. It's my understanding that the main factor for the council voting against the paved road was the fact that the costs were not budgeted for. It was mentioned earlier that millions have been committed to the roads for this budget, and I hope ours would be part of it and you would reconsider. I'm standing here now in front of you asking to consider including the funding in the next year's budget or years to come, at least to plan ahead. The city's website states that Troy is the community recognized for its excellent quality of life. I ask you to make it so for our neighborhood as well. I ask you to be committed to the effective management, not just of the dirt roads, but of our city. Maintaining our dirt roads is no longer effective. Our climate is not making it easy. And in this case, the commitment to effective management means planning ahead and including the costs in the budget. I believe Mr. Miller mentioned that the budget is being reactive to the inflation, and I'm asking you to be proactive and keep in mind our needs for our neighborhood, because we already know that the majority of our neighborhood voted for this project, and I know it's going to come up again. The petition is going to be signed again. We're going to have a majority again, probably even a higher number, so it will come up. And if you would consider including this in your budget for the years to come, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Sadikoff. Appreciate that. Next up, I see Tony Kappas is signed up, but I don't see Tony. Anybody see Tony Kappas? All right, that concludes those that have signed up for E1 or for the public hearing. That doesn't prohibit anyone from speaking now, even though you didn't sign up. Does anyone like to speak on E1 that hasn't already? All right, then I'll close the public hearing. I have a lot to say about some of these comments. Procedurally, now I'm not supposed to say them, right? All right. You're the procedure. City Clerk Dixon, it's out of order for me to technically speak in response right now. Is that correct?
You should move and second the motion, then.
All right, let's do that. I'd like to. There's Tony. Oh, Tony. I just called on you, but you just stepped up. I did. I closed the public hearing. Again, procedurally, do I need to
If council all agrees to allow Mr. Kappas to
need a
speak.
motion or just consensus? Consensus. Council all agrees. All right. Mr. Kappas, you got 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Very good. I won't need 3 minutes. First off, you people have got a hard job. And I just wanted to say thank you for recognizing that a couple weeks ago when you made a decision about the subdivision across the street, it really did no help to anybody other than the builder and didn't take the citizens into account as to what they were doing. The alternative plan that they came up with really was no better than the parallel plan. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys at least looking at it that way. I do have a question for you, however. My wife works from home, and because of that, and the two subdivisions that will be going in, one across the street and one behind me, or one next to me, for the next 3 years, we have been saddled with the fact that we're going to be listening to the beep of horns, the construction, the whole 9 yards. Is there any way to restrict builders so that they can only work normal Monday through Friday rather than and allow us to enjoy? Everybody's talking about owners' rights. My rights have been thrown out the window. I won't be able to go in my backyard and enjoy it because I'll be hearing construction next door. I won't be able to go in my front yard because I'll hear construction from the people. There seems to me that there's got to be some happy medium where the people that are actually paying the taxes and not the builders get something out of it. That's all I had to say. Again, thank you very much for taking consideration the last time I was here, and you guys got a rough job.
Thank you, Mr. Kappas. All right, that concludes those that have signed up for public comment. I'll move on to E1. I'm going to move the resolution myself. E1, I'll move the adoption of the proposed 2023-24 city budget as printed in the agenda packet. Support. Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve E1, adoption of proposed 2023 to 2024 city budget as printed in the agenda packet. And now we'll have discussion, and I want to start, if I can, just to speak to a couple of the comments. And then I'm going to go back and talk about the budget probably. So first, Sarah, and I think it was Chris, thank you for coming from Ridgedale. It's funny timing. I was a theater kid. I very much value. My daughter's doing a lot of theater now, so I just finished all that. And I appreciate you coming tonight and talking about it, because one of the things on my list is hey, I want to reach out to Ridgedale, because I've actually never been to a performance at Ridgedale. I've lived here 14 years, and I haven't. So I will definitely do that, and I know there's a lot of theater fans up here. So thank you for coming to us. As for the budget stuff, submit maybe some of the stuff you had written, and we can talk about that maybe at a later date. Obviously, tonight, that's not going to get into this budget, but it'd be interesting to at least have the conversation. So I want to start with that. So, and then I'll go out of order. Mr. Kappas, thank you. I don't know off the top of my head what the rules are and where those are stated for construction hours, if that's in an ordinance or if those are just administrative
If you know exactly.
regulations.
We're happy to talk with Mr. Kappas afterwards, but there are some restrictions as to the hours of construction, which is allowable. So we're happy to.
Okay.
I believe you can start work at 7 a.m. and you can't work on Sundays. I believe it's 7 to 7, but don't quote me.
Right.
Monday through Saturday.
Okay.
And then you would need a special work permit to work outside of those prescribed hours. And if you do notice work outside of those hours, you can call the police non-emergency line for that.
Okay. All right. I'm sure that conversation will continue with Mr. Kappas. Middlesex.
Mic is going.
My mic's bad too, see?
Yeah, now I hear it. Yeah.
I'm being silenced. I'm kidding. Shouldn't joke from up here. I do want to talk about the roads a little bit. I'm going to be really frank, because I've been talking for hours over the past couple months especially. I couldn't vote to spend over $2 million on your roads because I didn't know how many millions we were going to have to pay to keep our fire department intact. That was the budgetary concern that I was faced with, we were all faced with, that we couldn't talk about publicly yet, but that was something that was happening beneath the surface. So that's the starting point for that. We just had to spend a large amount of our savings account, essentially, to restructure how our fire department volunteer firefighters are incentivized, and that was a big issue. the biggest issue that we were facing for the past several months. So that was my initial concern. We were presented that agenda information well before an hour before the meeting. It was in our agenda packet, but please know that up front. I'll also say for myself only, controversially, I probably think these roads should be paved at this point. I think all roads in Troy should be paved. That's not popular for some people. If we, you know, what do we do to make this a priority? That's a great question. I did briefly talk with City Manager Miller earlier this morning. He mentioned having a study session to talk about some of these road issues, talk about the funding of these roads, how that all works out. I think the conversation will continue regardless. The fire department stuff dominated the past few months. I can't stress that enough. And Mr. Fagan, I'm sorry you had so many non-responses. I think it was for me, I don't like that I didn't respond as necessary, but I really couldn't think about paving roads in one small section when I was worried about a fire department for the whole city. That's on me, so please understand that. I appreciate that y'all came forward. I also talked to Nancy Bromley. I know she works with all of you, and talked a little bit about the stuff with her. Again, I'm one of 7, and we all, you know, there's a lot of other moving parts to the budgeting and how it works forward. Tonight, we are presented with a budget that we've studied and are, for myself, comfortable with passing as is, knowing that we will make tweaks throughout the fiscal year. I think it was Ms. Sadikoff who spoke about, you know, if not this budget, at least talk about some long-term planning in range. And I'm absolutely open to that. Again, as one of 7, I can't commit to that like this, but I think based on what, you know, City Manager Miller had said about talking about this a little bit more and even having some kind of study session, I would support that. At least from the whole standpoint of, I think there's about 4 miles of roads in Troy that aren't paved. And I think our policy actually is to get roads paved. But I don't know. So I just, you are heard, and I am trying to keep this going, but many other factors, including, you know, you heard that there's $3 million in a capital fund. While that sounds like a lot, that means it's way smaller than it used to be. And we're running out of capital fund money for big projects. So I don't want you to think like, well, he just said there's $3 million in capital funding. That's it for moving forward until we figure out how that gets replenished. So it's not something that is a quick fix, but it's something we definitely need to keep talking about. And whether, you know, I do really understand your frustration and what you thought, okay, we did this few months and we finally came and we got it and we have 58%, and then you had like 6 faces saying no, and probably we looked a little spooked. I think that was right around the time we were learning about the fire department stuff. So that's probably what a lot of that was. So I'm going to leave it at that for right now.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I have a comment, if you don't mind. 2 things related to this issue. First, we could talk a lot about the issue and the equity of if the city pays for all, but this is really not the venue this evening, and we can do that in the future. But when this issue came up, we had some new senior staff in positions who have never really dealt with special assessment districts, which we commonly call SADs. Well, I'll say SADs from now on. And we found that our policies were 30, 40, 50 years old, and at times have changed. And there were also some staff who had experience in other communities where our policies on how to apply SADs was much different the way than everyone else did it, that I thought from a management standpoint, we needed to, one, do research, what other communities do as a standard and what our policies are, and then put that in front of council, and council will give us direction back to see if we need to change our SAD policies, how we apply them. Because the whole point of special assessment districts is that you're assuming that developers had built out the roads everywhere else, and you have these areas that don't have it, and there needs to be some equitable way for the residents who live there to pay for their roads, because everyone else paid for the roads through the developer. So So what I would like to do is set up a study meeting to talk about SAD policies. And we're pretty much done with that research, and we're getting close. So look forward to a call for a meeting in the future coming up on your agenda to schedule a study meeting on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are still in E1 budget discussion. I led off with response to those who had spoken public comment, but E1 discussion. Hi. Councilmember Hoderick.
I just wanted to affirm and confirm that I had the same reaction in January that the mayor is talking about, and we were comprehending and swirling in our heads with some challenges we knew were coming to our budget regarding the firefighters. And the sticker price for doing the work there had gone up significantly. You guys got caught in the rock and a hard place of inflationary increase that made me wide-eyed, and also the unknowable and unknown at that time about how we would manage our incentive program. I have driven on your road since. I do go check it out. I love your neighborhood. And I do see, I rode on it the other day. It was a slow drive that I took for reasons that you all know and understand. So emails are not being ignored. It's in here, and understanding that we have to look at this at some point. So it does beg a question of, I know the weather prevents grading at certain times. I don't know if our DPW director, who lives on a dirt road himself, so is very familiar, is it soon that we'll be going through and refreshing that, or how does that work, and are we putting you on the spot to speak to that right now, or
if Mark wants to.
City Manager of Miller, I don't know if it would be, but budget considerations aside, there is the possibility of that road, and my assumption is you're on it, you're evaluating it, and you have a plan for it, and I thought this was a nice opportunity to talk about it.
Sure.
If you do.
Didn't plan on talking gravel roads, but certainly always willing to. So, yeah, we plan on going out tomorrow. We were going to go out today, but the rain predicted this morning. We don't like to grade roads, about 12 hours before rainfall, because it does wash that loose gravel out before it gets a chance to pack down. We have a lot of new staff over at the Department of Public Works, including the Streets Division. All of those, what we call heavy equipment operators, have gone to training. We actually hired an individual out of Wisconsin to come to the city of Troy and do grader training. So we have knowledgeable staff now that some of our senior staff have left. So some of our newer staff now has that same knowledge to be able to grade those roads better. We talked about using different materials. There's a lot of pros and cons to using different materials on gravel roads, and dust being one of the major factors. The state of Michigan Environmental Great Lakes Eagle is actually considering limiting our use of chloride on gravel roads, which will be detrimental to those gravel roads for dust control. They're talking about actually requiring us to permit the use of that chloride, including wintertime. So there's a lot of challenges to maintaining gravel roads, and honestly, you're right. I don't often talk about me personally, but I do live on a gravel road, and if there was a perfect way to maintain them, I would have figured it out by now, I promise you that. But yeah, I think with all the things that I just mentioned, that the maintenance of them, you'll see some improvement hopefully this summer with the education that we provided and looking at some of the different materials.
Thanks, Kurt.
I realize that's not exactly what you guys came to talk to us about, but know that you're on the city's radar, both for the near-term needs and for us to comprehend better how best to budget for this, and appreciate that you all came forward. And in the meantime, this budget proposal, which I know the others have similar, this is what it looks like that we've been studying for months, that we've given input to the city administration. They've worked with their departments to identify the priorities. And this is not, it can look like such a short-term process when we sit here and vote in this night, but there's been a study session and lots of thinking and strategizing going forward. And just, there's a paragraph in the letter to us all, which is a letter to the city council when the budget is presented to us, the draft budget, and to the community. And the paragraph at the top of it and the final thoughts kind of just sums up many of the reasons I want to vote yes on this, but this sums it up. The process for developing our 3-year financial strategy incorporates analysis, benchmarking, and long-term projections, and builds bridges between our short-term needs and long-term goals. This budget continues to meet these standards, and the result is a AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's Municipal Bond Rating Analysis and strong financial standing in Oakland County and the state of Michigan. We have the distinct privilege of living in a county known for its budgeting and financial planning best practices, and we mimic those here at the City of Troy. And this is the most important decision we make in the year. We take this very seriously. That said, when this, assuming this is approved tonight, we do identify through the year sometimes additional needs or the need to recalibrate something or do a budget amendment to meet a need that we didn't know needed to be met. Of course we do that. We work to be as nimble of a government body as we can be. By definition, government moves slow. You kind of want it to because the checks and balances are at work. But this is just a really caring city administration, a very caring city council, and so needs like the ones that were communicated to us directly tonight about one neighborhood, including other needs we've heard of from residents, including our seniors, and including folks communicating a lot of needs out there. We are hearing them, and we will continue. I shouldn't say we. I beg my colleagues' forgiveness, but I know us. We do hear, listen, and work to comprehend them collectively and collaboratively. And I just want to say, this gives us the foundation for going into our next fiscal year on really solid ground to keep this community as strong as it has been and the one that we love to live in. And for that reason, I will be voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Additional discussion, comments from council? All right. Kind of said my piece. Just to echo what Councilmember Hoderick said, I'm going to leave it at that. Just going to echo what she said as it relates to this. I think that was well put. So thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes public hearings this evening. Next up is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy businesses and residents. We've gone through those that have signed up, and we've gone through council and administration reply. We have no postponed items this evening, so we move on to regular business. First up is I-1 board and committee appointments. I do have 2 mayoral appointments this evening, so I'll move the appointment of Rosemary Kornacki and Carolina Noguez Ortiz to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for the terms expiring April 30th, 2026.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga, that we approve the appointment of Rosemary Kornacki and Carolina Noguez Ortiz to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for the term expiring April 30th, 2026. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries, and we thank both of them for their continued service on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. That concludes mayoral appointments this evening. We have no city council appointments this evening, so we move on to I2, board and committee nominations. I have no mayoral nominations this evening. It's my understanding that there are no city council nominations either. Next up is I3. There's no closed session requested. So we move on to I4, approval of the Troy Downtown Development Authority, TDDA, proposed fiscal year 2023-24 and 3-year budget, and that'll be introduced by City Manager Mark Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I am also the executive director of the DDA. The good thing is the DDA is actually sitting in a pretty good position, considering back in the Great Recession, it was very close to defaulting on his bonds, and the city saved it. So what is always critical to know about the DDA is that the bond payments, which are approximately, let me see here, debt service, it's 600, 700,000, and it creeps up to 938,000 in the third the third budget year in this budget, is that the city actually used their AAA bond rating to get those bonds, and the revenues from the TIF, the DDA TIF, is pledged initially to service those bonds. So when we initially created this program, we weren't sure how well it was going to work. It worked pretty good. Then, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Somerset Collection made just over a $4 million payment from the parking deck, which the DDA helped in the 90s. That then was used to pay off debt and then use the city's AAA bond rating again and refinance that whole debt. And that had set us into a pretty good position. When I mean the DDA. So there's about $1 million a year available. And so that then allowed us to start spending money for the re-landscaping. So that's what we're working on. And this budget does include funding for landscaping initially of the DDI, the Diverging Diamond intersection, which is out to bid literally right now. And we would expect, that the DDA in June, we have a meeting scheduled, I think it's June 22nd, to award the bid if the bids come in as we expect. So the DDA is actually doing fairly well. The other thing I would note that's in here is that 888 Big Beaver has a QDI program, and with the new investment that they made with the Zen Apartments and the parking deck, we are then allowed to pay for those eligible expenses from funds paid by their taxes. And we will not pay them their QDI payments unless all of their taxes are up to date. So with that, this budget is, I think the DDA is sitting fairly well. Just want to remind everybody that it does sunset in 2033. That's not a decision for tonight or the near future, but if you're still around in 2033, you should consider whether or not you still want to have a downtown development authority. With that, we recommend approval of the budget.
Thank you, City Manager Miller. Any questions about I4? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have two around the line item of Big Beaver Corridor maintenance. So I know with the exciting new streetscape project that will no doubt have a lot of new maintenance needs. Is that something that would come from that particular kind of line item? And yes.
Do you mean day-to-day maintenance of the
Maintenance, for example, just even lawn mowing.
Yeah, that comes from that line
It does,
item, yes.
but just expecting there's going to be a lot more complex streetscape with the new development, and kind of, do you feel like it's, as the budget goes over time, that it's going to be able to accommodate those new maintenance needs?
We're a pretty good team. We can ask Public Works Director Bovensteep if he's thought about if the new landscape is going to cost more money, but I would bet he doesn't have numbers yet, but I'm sure he's given it some thought.
In fact, I'm sure he's given this answer. Okay, this question was asked.
Yeah, this question has been asked actually several times at the DDA. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The design of the landscape itself has taken consideration of the maintenance. So it was one of our guiding principles is throughout the entire design is not to create a landscape design that created a lot of additional maintenance. Yes, there will be some. Our current contract that maintains the DDA right now, it's not really a la carte, it's a per acreage cost that includes, so we would not expect a significant increase in the maintenance cost. We would, however, see an increase in the water cost, which is separate for utilities of the DDA, but as far as maintenance, I would not expect a significant increase because of our design efforts have been so concentrated on not creating a lot of maintenance in the landscape.
That's excellent. That's good for us to know because I've gotten questions from residents, so it's good for me to be able to share that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.
Second question was around the district promotion, which is the marketing, and I've always asked every year, but it looks like you do expect to spend some resources on district marketing. Just kind of wondering, what's planned?
Mayor and Council, I'll answer that question. That traditionally has been a placeholder, and we still haven't spent any of those proposed expenditures, and then it goes back into fund balance. We being the DDA is looking at developing a subcommittee of members to start talking in detail what they want to do for promotion. So there is nothing proposed. That $25,000 is more of a placeholder. There's no specific cost identified yet. And the one thing I would note is that we do have some new creative social media savvy members of the DDA that want to get involved with that. Developers talk about when they build a development, it becomes Instagrammable moments. Seriously, they want people to go on their property and Instagram from their property.
I never thought I'd hear Mark Miller say that, but neither did staff. So, all right, any additional questions? Someone want to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-4, approval of the Troy Downtown Development Authority TDDA proposed fiscal year 2023, 2024, and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, that we approve I-4, approval of the Troy Downtown Development Authority TDDA proposed fiscal year 2023, 24, and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? I'll just say that this budget was approved and recommended by the DDA. Obviously, it's in the packet, but that's an important piece too. So the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is I-5, approval of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, TBRA, proposed fiscal year 2023, 24, and 3-year budget, and that'll be introduced by Mark Adams, our Economic Development Manager. Hey, Mark.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I have the pleasure of introducing the budget for the Brownfield Authority. And as you know, the purpose of the Brownfield Authority is to work on distressed properties within Troy and turn them into economically viable properties. And that can be either environmental concerns or obsolescence. And sometimes it's a combination of both. We have 5 active brownfields right now, and probably 1 or 2 in the pipeline. And as the budget shows, 3 are really active right now to where they are generating an incremental increase in taxes. And that's the whole purpose of the authority, to create an economically viable piece of property to assist with the cleanup and redevelopment or the repurposing of that property so it can generate the types of taxes that helps with some of the city services here. And as we've all listened today, city services is a big topic of discussion. Right now, I'm going to indicate that we have about $700,000 in cash flow on the brownfields right now. And again, we have 3 that are really active. And again, when I say active, they are creating an increase in taxes to where we can start reimbursing them for some of the costs for some of the environmental cleanup that has taken place. And right now, when you talk about obsolescence, maybe I'm getting a little bit off of the budget, but with this office building situation right now, you would never think that office buildings can become obsolete, but the state of the economy right now, we are looking at that, and when it's functionally viable, we're looking to put some housing in there. So we do have a plan. We are active. Mark is a part of that board, and we look forward to working with developers and creating more economically viable properties in Troy. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. And again, we have about a $700,000 positive cash flow in it right now. We are starting to pay back on 3 of the brownfields that we have. 2 have not gotten to the point where there is an increase in value to where we can start paying some of those costs that they have to clean up the property.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranka.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question. It's sort of a hypothetical, but it was all the talk coming out of our Michigan Municipal League CapCon around housing. So, and it's just legislation, but it relates to brownfield redevelopment authorities and around the potential, if this were to move forward, and people seem quite optimistic, it would create different incentives around workforce housing and other options. So I don't know if you've heard anything about that, or if that would have any impact, or any revisions or anything would need to be made to our Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, that plan or anything, or just we will wait and see what happens with that?
At this date, the board has not discussed that, but I think that's something that we can take a look at. Things are constantly changing, and you try to be on top of things. So that's something that we can take a look at. But as of right now, that has not been a topic of discussion.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Someone like to move the resolution? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranka.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-5, the approval of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, TBRA, proposed fiscal year 2023-24 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranka, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-5, approval of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, TBRA, proposed fiscal year 2023-24 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranka?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is I-6, approval of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee, proposed fiscal year 2023-24 and 3-year budget, also introduced by Mark Adams.
Again, good evening. The LDFA is the Local Development Finance Authority, and it's located at a 75-acre site. And of course, Automation Alley is really the anchor. And you could think of Automation Alley as a think tank. And the businesses within that particular park are, most advanced manufacturing technology. And the purpose of the board is to try to prevent unemployment within the park and to promote economic growth. And so the city of Troy has been doing that for a number of years. I know our city manager, Mark Miller, has a lot of history with working with Automation Alley and the Smart Zone, and that's been a very positive project for the city of Troy, I would say, and a great marketing tool for the city of Detroit to let folks know that we are a center of mobility, a center of innovation, and a center of excellence. And the center of excellence is a term that a lot of the manufacturers are using right now, and they say that because they are creating things, and that's the whole purpose of Automation Alley. And we support that through assisting them with their operating funds, that's a part of the LDFA, and then also with the infrastructure of the area. We assisted with their parking lot, and we're looking at some other things right now. One of the key metrics that we're looking at right now, and it's a lot of talk about it right now, is the charging stations, and maybe a super fast charging station, which costs a considerable amount of money. You're probably looking at anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000. And within the budget, we are positive of about $50,000, and we have sort of a holding spot of about, for this year, of about $76,000 for what we call general infrastructure. And what we hope to do is leverage that maybe with some county dollars to get a fast charging station into Automation Alley. But again, the key point is there is positive cash flow there. It is a great marketing tool for the city of Troy. I know a couple of the council and the mayor are part of that board, and we have discussions about how we are going to use those funds and really the purpose of Automation Alley. And I have a lot of history with Automation Alley, believe it or not. I was one of the original employees of Automation Alley with Ken Rogers when it was even talked about, and I've seen it morphed into so many different things over the years. So I think, again, it's a great organization to have within the city of Detroit. And again, getting back to the budget, we do have positive cash flow. We have been supporting the operation of Automation Alley for a number of years now, and we look forward to maintaining that 75-acre technology park right in the heart of Troy. Ready to answer any questions?
Thanks, Mark. Any questions? Someone want to move the resolution? Councilmember Abraham.
I'll move I-6, approval of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee proposed fiscal year 2023, 2024, and three-year budget as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-6, approval of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee, proposed fiscal year 2023, 24, and three-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Next up is I-7, amendment to Chapter 20 of the Troy City Code, and that'll be water and sanitary sewer rates. That'll be introduced by Rob Malzik, our Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. So before you tonight, and after our study sessions, we had talked about a rate increase of 7.7%. And what that actually represents is the costs that are passed on from the Great Lakes Water Authority and the Oakland County Water Resource Commission. And then a couple other things are going on this year as well. We lowered our consumptions by 10 MCFs this year, which is about 2.1%. Water usage has been down lately. Good for the environment, bad for the water fund and sewer fund. And then also our capital costs are increased over the past few years. And the Evergreen Farmington Corrective Action Plan, we had in the budget for $2.5 million because that's what they told us it'd be. And then they came across with a $4 million bill. So we have to make up for that as well. So before you tonight, that's why we have a 7.7% increase this year. And I'm willing to take any questions.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions? Someone move the resolution. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-7, amendment to Chapter 20 of the Troy City Code, water and sanitary sewer rates, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-7, amendment to Chapter 20 of the Troy City Code, water and sanitary sewer rates, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? And my only comment is that, as a reminder, like you said, these are essentially pass-through costs, where this increase is only related to the increase we're having to pay for the same services. So, city's not making money on this. Let's just be clear. All right. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes.
Thank you,
thanks,
Council.
That concludes regular? What's wrong with me? That concludes regular business this evening. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham?
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda this evening, they all have been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items. Those that had signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses have already spoken during the public hearing, so there's no need for reply. We have no council referrals this evening, so that'll take us to reports. Anyone on council like to discuss any of the reports this evening? All right, we'll move on to council comments. Councilmember Hoderick?
I just wanted to thank you, Mayor, for representing City Council and the city with your State of the City address last week. I've had a number of people mention to me about how proud they are to live in the city. They were before that. It reaffirmed them and their beliefs. I think one of the things that the address did is it expressed optimism, even as we talked, you on our behalf, about challenges that we have coming forward. And I think that gives people reason for optimism, that we're having frank discussions about things that are going well and, you know, also what we need to work collectively on going forward. So anyway, I wanted to thank you for the time you spent preparing for that. You know, to the Troy Chamber, Somerset Collection, you know, Cindy Stewart here from our Community Affairs Department works hard on that. And it's an address and a set of comments that together with our budget help frame, you know, basically how we're moving forward collectively. So appreciate that, and appreciate those that took time to reach out and give feedback about things that they're thinking about and understanding in the city. The more people that are engaged in a really constructive way, not necessarily about politics or a partisan slant, but truly what does the city look like? What does it feel like? What makes Troy so special and unique in the region, and how they want to play a role in that. And anytime that we can get to a place where we're doing that collectively for the most part, that's a good time to be in a community. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Additional council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Just briefly, it's interesting. I had all these comments prepared on the budget I wanted to share, but then I just wanted to rest in our public being here and sharing and having their input is things that we need to think about moving forward. And I can always share those on social media, as you gave me a call out in the state of the city. But the question that I did want to bring up, but I didn't think it made sense during the budget, but when I submitted a number, I know it was a lot of questions on the budget, there was one around our signage, both from our parks and the community center, as well as, of course, larger signage. And the answer I got is City Council has not yet approved a citywide signage concept. I know that's true, a citywide, we've not, but my understanding is we did give consensus on the parks and around, especially the community center, with those peeling kind of sticker-like images. So just wondered, where things are at with that, because that would be one of my wish lists in the budget, or something I would love to see us find a way to move forward on. Because it's our reputation. It's what people see when they come into the city.
Mayor and Council, as we noted earlier, we're at 20.6% of fund balance. So what I anticipate happening as we move forward into the next budget year, and we fully believe that we will be growing our fund balance, and then we'll be able to present to you a budget amendment, if you so desire to move forward with that signage package for the parks.
I've talked about this a lot. We do so desire, and we've expressed consensus a few times on that issue. So just as a reminder, understanding the budgetary concerns and the fund balance, I accept that and understand it. We'll keep asking about it, though, I think. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's
Thank you for asking that.
And actually, one question. So I was going to raise this question when the public was here. I know that we're talking about a study session to look at the special assessment district. And if there was a decision to, maybe that's revised, or we rethink that, or we move forward, not with that, but we look at our own funds. My understanding is whenever it comes to roads, like this 19.3 million we're approving for local and major roads, it's part of a 5-year capital plan, right, Mark? And it's something that it's not going to just happen overnight, probably not even the next year. It needs to be part of potentially a 5-year plan process.
6-year plan.
6-year plan, 6-year plan,
Yes.
thank you. And that was something just to manage expectations among the public. And that's, sometimes you see a new road go up and you think, oh, was that decided a month ago or a year ago? No, it was likely over 5 years ago. So just something to bear in mind.
Thank you. Good comment. Additional council comments? I'll just say about the State of the City address, I do also want to thank the Troy Chamber of Commerce and Cindy Stewart and the Somerset Collection for all the hard work that they all put into last Wednesday evening. And for residents who weren't tuned in live at 6 o'clock last week, it is on our YouTube channel and you can watch it and catch up. And we're putting the written version on the website. We'll probably be up this week, I think. So. Thank you to all who participated and for those who attended as well. And Councilmember Hodrick, thank you for that. It was nice. There's nobody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. And we don't have a closed session this evening, so we are adjourned.